I'm Mindy Wyke, and this is Work in Progress. It's a podcast where we will be talking all about human development in tech. In the tech world, WIP stands for Work in Progress. It's often used for pull requests, merge requests, and sometimes even technical documentation that is still in draft mode. It's not quite finished yet. And let's be real, we are not quite finished. Humans are always in draft mode. This podcast is about the real, the messy, the human side of working in tech. I'll be talking with engineers, but also designers, product folks, customer support, coaches, and people from all over the tech world about what they are learning about, struggling with, building, and becoming. But ultimately, we are not here to showcase perfection. We're here to normalize growth, share stories, and remind each other that being a work in progress is exactly where we are supposed to be. So let's commit to curiosity and jump into it. Welcome back to the Work in Progress podcast, where we are talking about human development in tech. Today with me, I have Brendan Schirmer. And take it away whenever you're ready to share your story, introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me. So, I'm Brendan Schirmer. I'm the founder of No BS Coaching, which is a fun little play on words for my initials, and also sort of an ethos into how I attack life and how I coach. I don't really take shit from me or anyone else. Long story short, I used to be an engineer. I'll get into this more, but I used to be a software engineer. Now I coach software engineers. So essentially, I saw a big gap in the communications between software engineers, and the way I like to think about it is like tech people and non-tech people. So your software engineers and your designers, or your software engineers and your product people. And I saw that there was this big, nearly translation gap where the engineers were talking, but the product people had no idea what they were saying. And so one thing sort of led to another, and I ended up wanting to change careers, but not sure what in or what to. And got introduced to the idea of coaching, and now it's where I am now, coaching software engineers and tech teams.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that you had mentioned to me when we spoke previously that you had switched into more of a team atmosphere. Is that sort of your focus currently, or are you still doing a little bit of both?
I do both. So I do both one-on-one coaching and I do team coaching. Before we get into that, let me go through a bit of context for how I got here. Dig a bit more into that story, because I think it's interesting. So hopefully your listeners think it's interesting. So I'm in my 30s. If we go back 15 years to high school, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I got to the end of high school and everyone's like, well, what are you going to do with your life? And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do with my next week. And so after high school, I ended up moving to the middle of Australia and worked in a casino for 2 years, actually. And from there, I was like, you know what? I'm always on my computer or I'm working. Why don't I get paid to be on my computer? So I went to uni because that felt like the next logical step. Got a degree in what was then information technology. I think it's now more computer science. It's probably changed since then.
Yeah.
And I was an engineer. Yeah. I was a software engineer / developer for 10 years, where I started to notice these gaps more and more. And I noticed that I had a better skill set in talking to people than other engineers. And so I ended up moving to the UK, which is where I am now. And one thing led to another, and the company I was working for, which was back home, said, hey, you should come back. And I said, look, I'm not doing that. I'm going to explore other options. And I got introduced into coaching. And through a big process of refining what I want to coach in, I have landed on team coaching, which is where we left off. So the team coaching, the idea is that I know from experience, software engineers don't do workshops. I don't like the idea of like someone coming in, getting paid a bunch of money to do a workshop. No one remembers it by Monday, and then they just leave.
Yeah.
So my idea is that I'm going to integrate into teams, into your actual software team for 1 to 2 weeks, learn how you communicate, figure out what the issues are for your team, and then build a system for you in that team that will work for your team. And then stay until the lessons are learned and the team communicates effectively. I saw a post the other day that said, just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you're not a good communicator. And I thought that spoke really well to what I do, because what I do in teams is figure out how do I work with the team's strengths and with the team, as opposed to what it is currently. Usually it's like, this is what we're going to do and sucks to be you if it's not how it works.
And I guess I'm getting the sense that like the timing varies greatly depending on the need, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if you have a team that picks it up really quickly, then it might be a couple of months, might be 3-4 months. But it also might be, start with one team and move into other teams. And then from there, even start working on, how we've got communication in one team or in 2 teams. What if we start communicating between teams as well? So there's lots of room for expansion on who I can teach how to communicate and really get teams like working well together. Because I know I've worked in some teams where I'm like, I love the job, but I can't work with these people. It's not going to happen. I even had one comes to mind. We had a new person join the team, and within maybe 4 or 5 weeks, my manager was like, we're starting a new team. Would you like it to join this other team? And I was just like, I can't get out faster. And it was just because of the way they communicated, like brilliant coder, brilliant at what they do, bad at team communication.
Yeah, this was back when you were software engineering. Is that right?
Yeah.
I think we've spoken before, and I believe you shared a story about like what led you to discover the fact that you were better at communicating than some others. Do you recall the story? It was like you were listening to somebody, and then like go ahead and share the story. I really liked it, so I'd love to hear it again.
It was, people ask me, when did you realize you're a better communicator than other devs? And I was like, it always comes back to this one time. I was sitting just at work, and a product person walked up to another dev. I could see them having a conversation. I couldn't see what they were saying. I couldn't hear what they were saying, sorry. And you could just see the product person's eyes just glaze over. And I was like, she did not get what she needed from that conversation. I'll quickly message her. Before she got back to her desk, I'd message her and said, hey, just checking in. You got what you needed. And she's like, I didn't get a thing. I have no idea what's going on. And I was like, all right, give me a sec. Yeah. I'll check in with the dev. I'll get back to you. And that sort of was the start of me being the translator between the engineers and the product, because product people ended up coming to me instead of going to the engineer they needed to talk to, because they knew that if they came to me and said, hey, I need this information, I could talk tech to the tech person and then come back to them with English they could understand. And same with designers as well. I know software engineers are so good at launching into like a TED talk for an answer. And you're like, I just needed to know if it was ready. I still don't know if it's ready.
Yeah, that sounds familiar. Oh, man. Yeah, so then you became the translator. So then now you are helping teach other developers how to be translators. Is that kind of the gist, or is there more to what you do?
More like I teach teams to not need a translator. And that's anything from things like not everyone likes to be interrupted the same way. Like as a software engineer, I hated when people tapped me on the shoulder, because I could be like 45 minutes deep in a mind map of code trying to fix a bug. someone taps you on the shoulder and like, hey man, you got a second? And I'm like, well, now you've just broken everything I've just worked on in my head. So sure, I've got a minute. Exactly. And then like, oh, is this ready? And you're like, you could have messaged me. Like just interrupt me in a different way. I would have seen, this happen all the time. I'm sure you know this as well. Sitting next to a software engineer and you go, I need to talk to that person. I'll message them and they're right there. And you see them and they like, their eyes dart over and they go, yep, I got a message. You know it's from you. They dart back and they keep going. And you're like, cool, I know. You'll get back to me when you're ready. So it's anything from like even that sort of thing, something as basic as that to as more complex things like, okay, you're a software engineer and you are very good at technical, but the person you're talking to is not technical. So what is the information they need and how do you get them that information in a way they understand? And vice versa, because obviously like product people also have to be able to talk in a way that devs understand. So the idea is they don't need a translator and they can then just be more cohesive.
Yeah, I like the sound of that. I would actually real quick like to circle back to the like basically the concept of async communication, even if you are sitting next to each other. It's funny, I feel like, I don't know if you get the sense that this happens, but I feel like I have to mention like, as you have time, like this is not urgent. Like in a lot of my messages, which is silly because the point is you can look at it when you're ready, to your point, like you'll get back to me when you're ready. I wish more people had that mindset. And I would love to hear, do you feel like you have to like teach that mindset? It sounds like you kind of do to some degree, but how do you combat that like instant gratification culture of like, I have to get back to them right now because they messaged me. It must be urgent.
I think it's, yeah, no, I get that. And also with like emails and stuff, as a software engineer who used to never get emails that were important, when you get one, you're like, oh, I've got to get back to it. I was like, but here's an email for a reason. I think it's about changing the culture around like the team culture to say, hey, as long as we're all on the same page, to say, if you get a message, you don't have to reply straight away. Because, yeah, it is just, I shake my head all the time, especially living in the UK where British people are so apologetic. And I'll meet someone new, message them, and they'll message me back like the next day and like, oh, I'm so sorry I didn't get back to you. It was a message. Like that's how it works. That's the async beauty of async communication. But yeah, it does. I think it does come down to culture as both in that instance, it's like actual culture of a country, but in a work setting, it's like, well, how do we build a culture where sending a message isn't urgent? If it's a message, it's not urgent. Like, end of story.
Right. I've tried to, I don't know if you feel like this works too, but I've tried to stop apologizing unless I said I was going to do something and like I got sick or something got in the way. And I'm like, I truly am sorry that it's, 3 days later. But I've tried to stop apologizing, which as a woman too, I have to try to, I try to avoid that generally. But like, instead of saying, I'm sorry for the delayed response, it's like, thank you for your patience, or just let's march right into the response instead. Do you feel like, is that sort of what we're trying to get at? Trying to normalize it slowly but surely.
Yeah, exactly. I actually put out a post on LinkedIn about this not long ago. Or maybe I meant to. Anyway, I don't apologize unless I have something to apologize for. And that comes down to, people apologize. Sorry, I didn't get back to you. What are you sorry for? You didn't do anything wrong. If it was urgent, I probably would have followed up. And even things like, this is actually really important, the difference between empathy and sympathy. I wasn't planning on talking about this, but this is so good. Because a lot of people don't quite understand the difference. Yeah, so like sympathy is expressing or trying to like make the other person feel like you feel what they have. But empathy is actually being there. So the difference between sympathy and empathy is, oh, I'm sorry you feel that way. And it's like, no, you're not. You're not sorry. Because you didn't do anything. Especially with things like, it's a really hard one when someone says, oh, I've just had a death in the family. I don't even apologize then. And it's like, because I'm not, this is kind of me being blunt, but I'm not sorry. I'm personally not responsible for this, but because that's sympathy. I do understand it's tough though. And I do want to be there for you.
I can imagine. Yes. I like to say, I can imagine this must be difficult for you, or like, this is such a challenge. I can imagine, I like to say things like that so that you're not saying I'm sorry. Cause I wasn't responsible for that. I like that. Continue though. Sorry.
But even things like, this must be so hard is projecting your emotions onto someone, which is then in turn sympathy. Empathy is, that's really tough because it is. One says, wow, you must, damn, that sucks. And the other says, that sucks. And I'm here. And it's two completely different, and this kind of what fascinates me about communication. And that's partly why I'm in communication coaching, is everything is communication. Not just your words, but how you say it, what you say, the things you do with your hands, that sort of thing. And it's so intricate. And a lot of people don't realize how much there is involved in communicating.
Yeah. I mean, every nonverbal thing, a slight cock to the head, like you said, a hand gesture, any of that can be communication too. It's amazing.
Yeah, I actually like that one. I use a lot of nonverbals when I'm coaching one-on-one. So if someone says something interesting and I want them to say some more, instead of cutting in and being like, oh, tell me more about that, I'll just be like, and just that little like,
The head.
And they're like, and they're like, oh, he's interested. I need to say more. And you can get people talking for hours without saying a thing, which is fascinating.
Yeah. That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I know that you didn't mean to talk about sympathy and empathy, but I'm glad we talked about it because it is a big difference. And I mean, even though I was trying to say that I knew what it was, I didn't. So thank you. But you did want to talk about the 2 millimeter shift, and I don't know what it is, but I'd love to learn more.
Yes.
Are you ready to talk about that?
Absolutely. The 2 millimeter shift concept. I thought I couldn't come on to a podcast called Work in Progress and not talk about not my idea, but this concept is actually like a Tony Robbins concept, if you know Tony Robbins. And the idea is that, the way he explains it is this. So we're sitting in our chairs. If you sit like a confident person, how would they sit? Like that,
upright?
Yeah. And like, you know what? Pump the chest out a bit, head up a bit. How much do you have to change your posture to not feel confident? For me, it's like that. So here's confident. I'm like, yep. I could take on the world. And I'm just like, not so much. And it's more than 2 millimeters. It's a 2 millimeter shift. And so the idea is, in a nutshell, what are the 2 millimeter shifts you need to make to change your life? Because there's only big change doesn't happen in one go. It happens in a series of small goes. And I thought, you know what? I've been doing a lot of these lately, and it would be doing your podcast a disservice if we didn't talk about them. What it looks like in reality is, actually, for instance, that what I just talked about in a team, how do people like being interrupted? Well, it's a very tiny shift between, hey, I've got to go get an answer from this dev by tapping them on the shoulder, and, oh, actually, I can just message them. But
Yeah.
the impact of that is massive. And so,
Yeah, I can imagine.
yeah. So it's a tiny change as well. So, or what's another one I could think of for teams? Even things like, actually, this is a bigger one that's or becoming bigger as we go on, is some people just don't like you tapping them on the shoulder. They don't like you touching them or being in their space. And people like product people or salespeople with the confidence and bravado that comes with those roles don't always think about that. So just like a little change, like, hey, if you need their attention, do something else. How do they like to do it? And when we're talking like a personal thing, actually, I was thinking about this a little bit to try and give a good example of a personal 2mm shift. And I was thinking, I think there's a good comparison between if you want to lose weight, because that's very tangible, people tend to go, well, I need to, all right, I got to lose weight, so I'm going to do my diet, have a better diet, cut out all sugar, I'm going to cut out alcohol, I'm going to the gym 4 times a week, and I'm just going to do it until it works. And I mean, look, speaking from experience, 2 weeks into that, and I'm not doing it anymore because it was too much all at once. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It was too much all at once, and the body and the mind don't like that. Now, you'll always behave in accordance to your beliefs. And if you don't change the beliefs, you don't change the behaviors. And so you change the behaviors, then you come back to the fact that you don't believe that's true. So you go back to the way you were, probably worse because then you failed at doing the thing you want to do. That in comparison to...
Yeah, then you feel bad about it and you go back into your cycle.
Right? Exactly. But in comparison to buying new clothes, how long does it take you to buy new clothes and realize you've got too many? Because I don't know anyone that throws out all of their clothes all at once and goes, I'm getting a new wardrobe today. Again, it's like 2mm shifts. I'm going to go out, I'm going to go buy a new shirt. And then the next time I get paid, I like this shirt or I like that, whatever. Then you end up 3 or 4 months later and you go, oh, I've got too much stuff. Because you made tiny changes for months at a time to a point where you then had a whole new wardrobe and you can throw out all the stuff that you have outgrown or it's no longer needed in your life. So that's sort of the concept, is a build-up of tiny little changes to make a big change in the end. I think it's really interesting that as a former software engineer and as a software engineer, that's what we do with code. We build, we test, we iterate, and we very rarely do a huge amount of changes all at once. If you look at Git commits, you have like 1 or 2 lines if you wanted, or like 1 file or parts of a file. And then you commit that and you test it and you go, cool, it works. I'm going to do some more. But then when it comes to life, we just do we hope, I suppose. We just do a whole bunch of changes and hope that it sticks. Which is kind of why I like the idea of this podcast and the concept, because everyone is a work in progress. And if we treated, your audience, I'm assuming, are quite technical, but they don't do the things, they don't do the things in life that they do in code, even though every day they're iterating to make code better.
Yeah. Yeah, I've actually had to have a conversation with my partner about this because, when you're trying to debug, for instance, oh, something that I've eaten has made my tummy hurt. How do you figure out what that was? Do you just cut out everything? You can. You could cut out everything and start small, but that's difficult. And how are you going to stick to that? Whereas you could just say, going back to your weight loss example, I'm going to cut out alcohol. I'm going to cut out sugar, 1 at a time. and figure out what's actually happening. But yeah, like if you make so many changes at once, it's also hard to figure out what actually was the bug.
Yes.
Yeah, so I like that in the essence of like both making small tangible changes, but then also understanding, similar to code, like you don't understand what's happening unless you like go a little bit at a time so you can see what's actually
Yes.
changing, like, line by line. And now that I'm working more on the front end recently, I can see it even more because I'm like, oh, if I just turn this off, great, now I see what changes.
Yes.
But yeah, it's fascinating. The slower you go, the more you know. I like that it rhymes. I'm gonna use it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, I find it just fascinating that software engineers are so brilliantly minded that we can dig through code that is so abstract to any other person, and they can say, this is what's wrong. And then you turn around and go, hey, how was your weekend? And they're like, oh, I didn't have a good weekend, but I can't tell you why. And you're like,
Yeah.
what? Like, that doesn't make any sense. Well, I was going to go through, like, that's the concept, but like, how do you actually become more effective with this? As, if you can do it in code, you can do it in life, but how do you do it in life? And I think this is it's actually fairly simple. First of all, if you have to know what you want very specifically, or exactly what you want. And I would suggest doing this, like you said, on one little thing. If you want to lose weight, do it very specifically of, I want to lose 10 kilos, 20 pounds, whatever it is. And don't go, I want to lose 50 pounds, get the partner of my dreams, get married, have kids, buy a house. Okay, it's sure you can do all those things. But looking at them all at once is very overwhelming. Yeah, like, again, it's a big change all at once. You might be disappointed. So then, after you know what you want, figure out where you are and figure out what's the gap. So things like, for example, if you're like, I'm earning $75,000 a year and I want to be earning $100K a year, well, you're at 75, you want to be at 100. Awesome. The gap is 25,000. Money, whatever money you use. And then that's where you go, well, figure out the first tiny changes towards that person. What does that person do? What is $100,000 a year person? How do they show up at work? What do they prioritize? What do they need to learn? And then take one of those things and start doing it. And this is I think the most important bit. Actually record what you're doing. Whether that be in a journal or a habit tracker, on your phone, on paper, whatever works for you. Actually record what you're doing and figure out what you need to record and record it, because then you start to see patterns. And that's what we love as software engineers. We love patterns, and we love figuring out what's working, figuring out what's not working, getting rid of the stuff that's not working and keeping the stuff that does. So do that in life as well. And then to come back to the software analogy, reflect and then iterate on the things you're doing. So keep working on what's working, remove the stuff that's not working on a weekly basis, and just go again. Do another 2mm change.
Yeah.
And in time, you start becoming the person that earns. Exactly. In time, you start just being the person who is worth 100,000 a year. And then you just step into that role, as opposed to trying to prove your worth. And then whoever makes the decision on your pay says, well, not really worth that much.
But I think it helps a little bit to have a something tangible. I like to ask myself similar questions, like what would a healthy person choose? What would, like you said, what would someone who's worth 100K choose to do? Which then helps you like take actions that are better. So instead of having a cookie, I'll have, like some yogurt and fruit as a snack for the healthy person thing. Or like, I think it just helps you to sort of tangibly visualize or have a sense of like, what should I actually choose? Like, how would I know what a 100,000 100K
Yeah.
money per year person does.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
But
like
then
that.
also when it comes to things like, you know, being healthy or earning more money, someone else has done this. So you can actually model
Yeah,
your behaviors off someone else. Well, you know, this person's
right.
lost weight. What would they have done to get there? And they probably, if you know they've lost weight, you can probably find out what they did. You know, if someone does get a pay
Yeah.
rise, you can go, hey, who were they before and after? And what can I model as their version of success?
Yeah, that's true. Having a model is helpful. I agree.
Yes.
So before we wrap up today, I would love to hear if you have any examples you're willing to share about something you're doing for the for the 2 millimeter shift in your life, or is there some other tangible examples that you might have besides our continual weight loss and software engineering ones?
Yeah, so this has been a big thing for me in the last little while. The first thing sort of started, this was not a 2 millimeter shift, but it was the start of many others, was I actually got myself a coach. So I am a coach and I believe everyone should have a coach. So I got myself one. Not a 2 millimeter change, but definitely a life-changing decision. And then from there, I've had her help to sort of help me figure out who I want to be as a coach. And from figuring out the image of who I want to be as a coach, the sort of money I want to make, how I want to show up, I've done things like I reset my prices to what I think I'm worth, not what I think people will pay. And then from there, I posted this on LinkedIn, but I fired 4 of my clients who just didn't align with my new shift. And that was quite hard because, you know, I want to have clients, but I also want to be in a line with my clients. And so I actually I've given 3 others, I would like to say notice, I suppose, that, hey, the contract will come to an end soon because you don't align with the coaching I want to give, because I think it's really important that you show up as the person you want to be. And if that's not happening, then you need to change that. And for me to show up to these clients, it's not in alignment with who I want to be. And therefore, I think I'm doing us both a disservice by showing up as that person. And then even little things like I bought new shirts, right? Like this is a new one I bought because it makes me feel better. I didn't spend much money on it, but like, yeah, exactly. I was like to wear on calls, and it's about how you show up, how I show up as a coach. And I want to show up as someone who gives off this sort of vibe and not wearing a hoodie with a hole in it, for instance, which I do have a hoodie with a hole in it and I need to get rid of it.
I mean, don't we all? Come on.
Exactly. And actually, I was talking to a client today, someone I'm not firing because they are doing really well and they align really well with me. But his goal is to lose a really significant amount of weight over the next 2 years. And I know we're talking about weight loss and trying to move away from it, but the 2 millimeter shifts, it's interesting because his goal isn't just to lose weight. It's to be the guy who has lost the weight. And I think that's important. So for instance, this week, his goal wasn't even about losing weight. The 2 millimeter shift he was making was all he wants to do is add exercise into his habit stack or into his morning routine. So his goal was to just put his gym shoes on and then celebrate that he put his gym shoes on. That's it. He didn't even have to go to gym. He didn't have to exercise. All he wanted to do was say, get the shoes on, because that's what the guy who's lost the weight would do. And you slowly build on that. Once that's a habit, you start going, okay, well, I've got my shoes on, might as well go out and go for a walk. Now you're going for a walk every day. You go, well, I can probably go for a run now. And then in 2 years, I can nearly promise you in 2 years, he would have lost all the weight because he's starting with the end in mind. He's figuring out where he is now. And he goes, well, what are the absolute tiniest things I can change to get to this with this end in mind.
Yeah, Anna has that model that we were talking about too. Like, again, what does a healthy person choose? What does a person who has lost this weight choose? Like, they go on walks, they run, they wear gym shoes. Whether they go to the gym or not, they're moving. I like that.
Exactly.
Props to them, and I wish them luck on their very what's the word I want to use? Very reasonable 2-year journey. Because that's, I think, oftentimes, again, I know we're talking about weight loss, we're trying to get off of it, but oftentimes, at least in the culture in the US, it's like, I need to lose 50 pounds tomorrow, and it's just, it doesn't make sense. It's not realistic. So I appreciate that someone is, that your client is considering life and how to actually achieve it sustainably. Yeah. So that's wonderful.
I mean, and also, like, I know weight loss feels like a very tangible example, but also I know a lot of people in software that would like to lose weight. So I do hope that this chat has sort of inspired them to know that, like, it's not about losing 50 pounds tomorrow. It's about putting your gym shoes on today.
Well, and I mean, there's also the concept of, like, if you have extra weight, it didn't get there in a day. So it's not going to leave in a day. I know I'm being a little dramatic with the 1-day change, but it takes time and effort, and it takes a real mental shift. So I appreciate that you're helping with that.
I'm glad actually I can, because I do a lot of communication coaching, one-on-one as well. But I really do like that communication is kind of the surface. And communication skills are kind of the surface, but when you dig a bit deeper, I love working with people on this sort of stuff because it is changing people at their core. And it all starts with how you communicate with others, how you communicate with yourself, and the choices you make moving forward.
I love that. Well, I don't know about you, but that feels very like a nice little bow on the conversation. I love that.
It does feel like that, yes.
So it does. So I like to ask, if there is one thing that you have the audience leave with, if they remember nothing else, what would you like people to walk away with?
Honestly, probably that. I think as a communication coach,
pretty good. That was good.
As a communication coach, it really is about, when you want to see change, it's about how you talk to people, or how you communicate with people, how you communicate with yourself, and then taking tiny changes, minuscule changes forward. Because what's the saying? The walk of 1,000 miles starts with one step. Like, it is just tiny changes build up to big change.
Well, perfect. I think that's the call to action here, is find your 2 millimeter shift and consider who you want to be at the end of your 10,000 step journey or whatever it was. Well, cool. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you for having me. And if anyone wants to find me, you can find me on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, whatever the thing is, / Brendan Schirmer. You can find me on the post that you put out as well, which will be good.
That's it for this commit of the Work in Progress podcast. If you liked it, please hit follow, leave a review, or share it with another human who's figuring things out too. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and keep showing up, even if it's still a draft. Until next time, keep iterating.